नमस्कार, मी ॲडव्होकेट Zai Vaidya. Today, we are going to talk about, or rather discuss, something which I have been studying on. Uh, I myself am a practicing advocate, and I am also a founder and a trustee of an organization called Samanvay, which works in the field of family law. So, as part of our work, we do a lot of all of us, we do a lot of research, we do a lot of reading, we do a lot of study of various laws which are coming in the picture. And if, as I have been studying the various laws which have been going on, what I can see is that there is a new law which is coming up known as the Transgender Persons Rights Bill. Now, this is one law which is a special legislation, it's a social legislation, and it, despite being so, it appears that there seems to be a lot of things missing out. I'm not here on to talk about or discuss about the transgender people, their community, their issues. I'm not talking about the transgender law as such, as it has been passed. What I'm more concerned about, the way this litigation has flown or the way the case law has developed in these, which has been giving various liberties and rights to the transgenders. And all this is going to be a part of the family law as it is right now. So right now, when we talk about the family law, we talk about the marriage, we talk about the divorce, we talk about the adoption, maintenance, the children. It is related to so many things. It even if one feels that this is something very different, but it relates to surrogacy, it relates to inheritance, and so many issues are a part of the family law. The offshoots are always there. There is also criminal law when it comes to cases like 498 or other cases, dowry related cases, or other cases where there is an offshoot of criminal law as well. So, as we have seen these developments, and especially the progressive judgments that the Supreme Court has been recently passing on some important issues, the future of the family law, how it is going to be practiced, is going to be something which needs to be seen and studied. And I have been seeing this development, and that is what I would like to share with you all as colleagues and friends. So, coming to that, as we all know, recently, that is around in 2019, effective from January 2020, the Transgender Persons Protection of Rights Act has been passed. Now, when we talk about the transgenders, we as common people, we have seen a very small aspect. But as the transgender community is developing, there are certain issues which we need to understand to have a clarity over what is it that has been intriguing me about this development of the case law through the Supreme Court judgments. So let us make a beginning with a little bit of clarity, getting a little clarity on the issue. First and foremost, we need to understand the difference between the sex and gender, which most of us, I believe, should be knowing because we are talking about the gender equality, gender jurisprudence. We are talking about through the Article 14 of the Constitution, the equality law. But still, just as a recap, sex, as we know, is biological, as is seen in the anatomical physical characteristics of the external genitalia of a person, by which we identify the sex of the person and we label a person as a man or a woman. So far, whenever we have been talking about sex or gender, we have been talking in binary terms, that is, either a person is a man or a person is a woman. It is very recently that India has started accepting the third gender. Now, when we talk about gender, the gender is again a completely abstract term, it is more theoretical. So, gender is a thought process which is learned through the social and cultural influences and learning. It is a learning process. You learn to think in a particular way, which is a typical of your gender, which is assigned to you by identifying the physical characteristics of sex which you are born with. So it is changeable. One can learn it differently. In a particular society, in a particular culture, the sexual or the gender ideas may differ from another society or culture. So now we have been so far talking about the binary gender issues. So when we talk about the sexes, when we talk about the equality, we are not talking only in terms of the sex of a person, but we are talking about the gender of a person, which affects his entire life because it affects the thinking process, it affects the way a person works, it affects the cultural or social biases which work against that person. So, so far we have known only uh, gender in binary terms, but the gender is such a deep rooted thing that it can create certain gender roles. For example, if a woman, I'm talking sex and gender both in both terms here. So if a person is of female gender, female sex, then a person should behave in a particular way. A person should act or dress in a particular way. Now, these are gender roles which are assigned to his or her sex, a person's sex. Now, this goes on to create gender stereotypes. Gender stereotypes are when society expects a particular group of people of particular sex to behave in a particular way. So, for example, comments like uh, a woman driver will not be able to drive well is a gender related comment. It is stereotype comment which puts together all women drivers as a class and a bias is working against them. So that is called a gender stereotype. Now gender stereotype further develops into gender ideology. Gender ideology is the term of ism. This ism, which is, for example, feminism. Feminism specifically refers to females as sex, female gender as gender, and a ism, which is a thought process or a science that goes behind it. So, this way, the gender roles develop into gender stereotypes develop into gender ideologies. Now, as I said, or rather, I've been saying that we have known all this only in gender binary terms. Now we need to go ahead and understand that there are more genders than one. I'm not going into, there are people who say that there are about 13 main genders. There are people who say there are about 35 main genders. I'm not going into all the gender explanation, but I'm going into one or two very important genders which we understand as gender and we need to understand in the terms of law. So, one of the normal people, let us say normative people, the normal standard people who are who conform to their gender which is assigned to their sex, that is a person born with male sexual characteristics and assigning to the gender role which is assigned to the male sex, also conforms to the gender role which is assigned to the male sex, is known as cisgender person. So cisgender person is a person who conforms to the gender role with the sex with which he is born. That's called a cisgender person. Now, the next is a transgender person. That is, a person is born with particular sexual characteristics. However, his thinking process or her thinking process is of other gender, who's known as transgender. Now, this again, transgender is different from transsexual. Transsexual and transgender are two different terms, which we need to understand. A transgender person may or may not undergo a surgery and change himself scientifically as well or medically as well into a transsexual. So transgender again refers to mental process while transsexual will refer to the physical process as well. And the next criteria is also gender queer. Now gender queer is a person who is not sure whether gender wise, I'm not again talking from the sexual characteristics, physical sexual characteristics. A gender queer person is a person who's not sure whether he's a man or a woman, or he could be both, or he could be a combination. So that is called a gender queer person. The next type is gender fluid. So gender fluid people can feel that they are sometimes like a man or sometimes like a woman, and they find themselves moving between different gender presentations and identifications. So if we see, apart from the normative binary classification into male and female, there are other people who may or may not be classified into watertight compartments as male or female if we go by the gender ideas, if we go by the transsexual ideas. So now again, we spoke about the sex, we spoke about the gender, we spoke about the types of gender, we spoke about the difference between transgender and transsexual. There is another issue that we need to consider, and that issue is of sexual orientation. Now, sexual orientation is again totally different from what is transgender and transsexual. Sexual orientation is all about a preference of a person of sex to have sexual activity with a particular partner. So this has to do with the sexual activity and the preference of a particular person to have that sexual activity or to derive pleasure from another partner. Now, when it comes to a cisgender person, the person who affirms to the sex physiological sex that he is born with, generally it is understood or the society has considered it normal to have a heterosexual sexual orientation. That is supposed to be the normal, normative, standard issue, socially accepted norm. But this sexual orientation again can be different and is known as, we know this as lesbians, gays, bisexuals, pansexuals, and so on. There are various types in this also. There is a cisgender person who is straight, that is he is conforms to his sex also, his gender idea or gender role also, and is a heterosexual, is known as a cishet or cishet, CISCSHET. So these are various again differences in the sexual orientation. Now we have seen that there is a categorization as per the sex, categorization as per the gender ideas, categorization as per the sexual orientation ideas. There is also another category which is also known as intersex. Now, intersex are the children who are born without any specific normative genitalia, and it is and their as soon as they are born, generally the doctors advise the parents to have a physical surgery performed on them so that their sex can be determined via their external physical genitalia. Now, a movement started wherein it was said that the child by himself does not know with what sex he is born when the surgery is performed so early. So, in such a situation, the child should not have to undergo a surgery as per preference of his parents. So, an intersex child's right to determine his sexual preference or to understand himself, to know, and then have the surgery performed was agitated in Kerala a few months back, sorry, a few years back. So all this has been decided in various judgments. I'll come to that. But now, having understood this wide spectrum, now let us understand what have been the case law so far and what have been the progressive judgments. Let me start with the judgment of 377, which we all know. Here, the emphasis was on the unnatural sex versus the natural sex, wherein the courts, wherein the law had used to accept only the heterosexual activity as the normative or standard activity. It had attached morality to it. So whatever that was not normative heterosexual activity was not only considered to be illegal but also immoral and therefore punishable. So both these concepts were brought together. We started off with the judgment of Naz Foundation by Delhi High Court under Justice A.P. Shah, wherein the criminality attached to this sexual activity, which was not heterosexual, was removed, and the sex between two consenting adults was not criminally liable. Now, from there onwards, it has culminated into the latest judgment where the acceptance of freedom of choice of sexual activity as form of self-recognition, expression, and identity as a fundamental right, fundamental human right, was recognized by the Supreme Court in Navtej Singh Johar judgment. Now, this is a fantastic reading as far as the judgment is concerned, and it really takes us into the lofty principles of law and jurisprudence at its best. So, what has happened here is the doors are opening up for including all these various gender types and sexual types that we have discussed into the mainstream with this judgment. So here, the acceptance to the LGBTQ community is increasing day by day. Now, this judgment, after this judgment also, this judgment, before this judgment was Nalsa versus Union of India, which is again a famous judgment, which spoke about the sex reassignment surgeries that we just mentioned. The sex reassignment surgeries on the intersex children. The Supreme Court very categorically stated that no one shall be forced to undergo medical procedures, including sex reassignment surgeries, sterilizations, hormonal therapies, as a requirement for legal recognition of their gender identity. So, not only the choice as to when to do it, what should be your identity, but even if there cannot be any force to a person at a young age. It further said any intersex child is entitled to and must stay within the folds of its family. The running away from the family to the margins and beyond is a fatal journey that must be arrested. Time has come when they are brought back from the margins into the mainstream. So this very well tells us what are the intentions of the court, which says or which has understood the plights of such children who are hated, who feel outcast, who feel or who are probably even in their families are not allowed to be at home, are treated with violence or hatred, and they have to run away and be a part of the marginal community that we have. So in order to bring them into the mainstream, if we have to open the doors wide, then we know what we are talking about. Then, of course, came the judgment Navtej Singh Johar in 2018, as we know. The choice of a partner, the desire for personal intimacy, and the yearning to find love and fulfillment in human relationships has a universal appeal. So the Supreme Court has gone beyond the limited idea that sexual activity is meant only for reproduction. The Supreme Court goes beyond and says that it is a fundamental right of every individual to have sexual activity, choice of a partner, desire for personal intimacy, and it leads to the love and fulfillment in human relationships. The state has no business to intrude into these personal matters, nor can societal notions of heteronormative activity regulate the constitutional liberties based on sexual orientation, are the words of the Supreme Court. So, where the Supreme Court has also stated that we should not treat them as somebody different, but all this should be taken as a part of the mainstream of the normative mainstream issues. Now, going ahead, there is also another judgment which we cannot sideline because this is again a part of the large spectrum as far as when we are talking about the family law in general. We are not talking only about the Domestic Violence Act or otherwise. We are talking about the family law, which is a very broad spectrum. We also need to consider the judgment on adultery, which abolished again the 497, the criminality attached to 497. Joseph Shine versus Union of India, which again came in 2018, which very, I would say, very laudably stated. The realities of human life are far too complex to place them in closeted categories of right and wrong, and to subject all that is considered wrong with the sanctions of penal law. Here, just if I am correct, Honorable Justice Chandrachud went a step ahead and also spoke about a woman's right over her body, woman's autonomy over her body and her sexual preferences, even after marriage. So, what we are paving way, the reason why I am discussing these judgments as well, is to show that we are paving way or opening our doors wide, and we are moving towards a very inclusive society. Then all these judgments, as we have seen step by step, were based on constitutional ideas of morality, the privacy, idea of privacy, the individual dignity, the sexual agency, gender parity, and based on this, the transformative vision of the Constitution or the social engineering that the Constitution has been speaking about has we see in unfolding it through these judgments when we read them. Now, going one step ahead, there is there has been a recent judgment which came in 2019, which was Arun Kumar and Shrija versus IG registration and others. Now, this was a very peculiar judgment. Shrija, who was the lady out of the couple, Arun Kumar was the husband, Shrija is the wife, and they both got married. And the IG registration refused to register their marriage under the Hindu Marriage Act because Shrija was a transsexual person. She was a man earlier, she performed surgeries, and she changed herself into a woman. So here, the registrar refused to recognize her as a woman or fitting into the Hindu law. Now, here I would like to mention that if we read the matrimonial laws, then in that case we will see that nowhere it is stated that the marriage should be a heterosexual union. It does not say so. What it states is that even the Hindu law, as we read it, the marriage should be between two Hindus. It does not speak about the man or it does not speak about a union of heterosexual persons. So this is what we need to understand. The first mention of a bride and bridegroom is in section 5 of the Hindu Marriage Act, and that is precisely what the court pointed out, saying that the Hindu law does not, or rather any matrimonial marriage law, you will find it does not prohibit a marriage between same sexes per se. It does not allow it, but it does not prohibit it also. So, in view of that, the mention only in the valid conditions of marriage, where it is mentioned that the bride must be of 18 years of age and the bridegroom should be 21 years of age. That is the only place where it is presumed that the marriage between two Hindus would be a heterosexual marriage. So considering this, what we have to say is here the Kerala High Court was highly progressive in saying that the bride and bride's groom, the meaning under section 5 of the act cannot be construed to be so narrow as to not include the transgender person. Here again, the court, of course, went into the referred to all the judgments which have been passed so far. Now, what I hear is that there is another judgment. So here, the first marriage between a normal person, normal and a transsexual, which has been accepted, has been directed to be registered. However, the fact remains that the woman was a transsexual. So, what we need to see is how do we go ahead, or when this door opens further wide, we will see marriages between the same people of same sex as well. We have to be prepared for that. In fact, from what I read, there is already a petition filed in Kerala High Court seeking to allow the transsexual or transgender marriages or same sex marriages and making them legal. Of course, the petition is waiting to be tried and the final decision is awaited. Now, thereafter, there has been a recent news which I read wherein a transgender person has been appointed as a judge on the Lok Adalat panel in West Bengal. So, this is another news. This is another progress that we are having. Now, in the light of all this, as we can see, if there are going to be marriages to be allowed between the transgenders, transsexuals, between same sex, and so on, so if there are going to be marriages uh, happening, then there is going to be a residence, then there are going to be issues, all issues which we have been facing so far, which in the normative category, in the what is acceptable socially so far, are also going to rise there. Now, the reason why we need to consider or we need to foresee what is going to come to us is if we see many issues which we consider in family law, in the realm of family law, are generally based on the binary units that we spoke about, the male and female, because the marriage between the parties is supposed to be a heterosexual marriage. So when we talk about the custody of the child, we are talking about the mother or the father. We are talking about the husband and wife when it comes to maintenance, when it comes to other issues. So therefore, when we were going to talk about the issues like the specific women-oriented acts, the acts which are specially designed, specially passed for to give relief to the women, to protect women, to prohibit any kind of violence against women. For example, what we are discussing today, like the Domestic Violence Act, the Section 498 for dowry, the section, the protection or prohibition of sexual harassment at workplace. So these are specific women-centric, women-oriented acts where it is presumed or it is socially, culturally disadvantaged or unprivileged women as a class and category as victims has been considered. And in these, under these acts, only women can be the victim, only women can file the cases, and the respondent is the male. Now, this is again the normative standard. So, what is going to happen when all this gets mixed up and we find different issues arising? I think in the family court Mumbai, there is already an issue or a case of a transgender person which is going on in the family court Mumbai. There are also issues which are now coming up, discussions which are going on, and issues that need to be discussed. Let's say, for example, like adultery. In the reason why I mentioned also the 497 judgment was the same as what happens when one of the person, one of the spouses has an adulterous relationship with a person of same sex. What is the remedy for that? Is there a remedy for that? Or will the remedy only remain the divorce, where either of the parties can take a divorce? So these are some issues which are going to hit us, and we are completely unprepared. Now, going into the further discussion, what I would like to take you through is what does the Transgender Act say? Where does it lack? And how it does not take into account the various issues that even the Domestic Violence Act has considered. So, if we see the the Transgender Act, it does not define anywhere what is a domestic relationship. It does not define anywhere what is a shared household. So the Transgender Act defines family though. The Transgender Act defines family, but this the definition of family is not part of the Domestic Violence Act. So when we are talking about marriages, when we are talking about familial relationships being created between the persons of various genders, various sexual orientations, various sexes, when we talk about the same-sex marriages, the family situation is not going to be changed, not going to change. The hierarchy, the power, the conflicts, the situations, the domestic violence, the nature of it, is it going to change or is it going to remain the same? What happens to the children who are adopted or brought into this marriage, into the family by way of surrogacy? So when we see this, we see these large gaps in the Transgender Act, and nor will they will be filled, can be filled in the Domestic Violence Act, and there is going to be a huge gap between for these people when they start living in the family or in family. So what we can see is the Transgender Act defines family, which says means a group of people related by blood or marriage or by adoption made in accordance with the law. So it defines family. On the other hand, if we see the Domestic Violence Act, the Domestic Violence Act defines domestic relationship. And in the domestic relationship, it says between two persons. Domestic relationship means a relationship between two persons who live or at any point of time have lived together in a shared household when they are related by consanguinity, marriage, or a relationship in the nature of marriage, adoption, or are family members living together as members of a joint family. So here the definition of family is much larger than what it is in the Transgender Act. And it is quite possible that a person may fit into the definition which is stated under the Domestic Violence Act, but not in the Transgender Act when it comes to domestic violence being perpetrated. Then, if we see the next definition again, the Domestic Violence Act being a woman-centric act, it specifically defines aggrieved person, and it also states that the aggrieved person will be a female. Now, what happens to a person who's a transgender, who's a transsexual? We have no answers anywhere because the Transgender Act does not take into consideration a situation of domestic violence at all. There is no mention of domestic violence. There is no mention of shared household. There is no mention of domestic relationship in the Transgender Act. The Transgender Act defines persons with intersex variations. It talks about the stating, let me read that definition out. The transgender, the person with intersex variation means a person who at birth shows variation in his or her primary sexual characteristics, external genitalia, chromosomes, or hormones from the normative standard male or female body. Then this is with regards to intersex person. Then it goes on to define a transgender person who does not match with the gender assigned to that person at birth, includes a trans man. Now here we are talking about the transsexual. We are not talking only about the transgender. So a trans man or a trans woman, whether or not such a person has had sexual reassignment surgery or hormone therapy or laser therapy or any such other therapy, person with intersex variations, genderqueer persons having such socio-cultural identities as Kinnar, Hijra, Aravani and Jokta. So these are the communities that the Act defines, but there can be people who may not belong to any of these communities but may fall into or outside the normative standard definitions. Now, here the respondent is in the under the DV Act, the respondent has been defined, the aggrieved person has been defined, which is not the case here. Now, coming to the protection from discrimination, when we see about the major difference between the Transgender Act and the Domestic Violence Act, it does not, as I have repeatedly said, it does not take into consideration the domestic violence, but it does seek to protect them from the discrimination. And it feels that as soon as the protection from the discrimination has been accorded, most of the problems should be solved. So the Transgender Act says no person or an establishment shall discriminate against a transgender person on the following grounds, which is access to the educational institutes, employment or occupation, healthcare services, access to public spaces and utilities, public or private offices. Now, again, as we can see, they are looking at bringing the transgender people into the mainstream by giving them all facilities like any other normal human being. But the sphere of family, except for allowing them to stay within the family, is completely neglected. And these cases are likely to come to us under the DV Act, where the DV Act does not again provide for them. Now coming to the identity as transgender, the transgender person shall have, it goes by the NALSA judgment that essence has been taken here, though not fully, and the transgender community opposing the act or critically appraising this act would like this to be amended further. It says that a transgender person shall have a right to be recognized as such in accordance with the provisions of this law, that is the certification and the examination which has been stated, and the person recognized as a transgender under subsection 1 shall have a right to a self-perceived gender identity. So the self-perceived gender identity is the important term here which goes as per the NALSA judgment as well. Now here again, when we are talking, we will have issues when we talk about a genderqueer person who may perceive himself as both or neither. So in such a situation, How do we deal with that person? As a man, woman, third gender, gender queer, in what way? Or, for example, a gender fluid person. A gender fluid person who sometimes for a period thinks that he is a man, or he's after a number of years he may start feeling no, he is a woman. He may identify or she may identify himself differently. So such gender fluid people who may change their self identification, what happens to that? What will be their legal standing? Where will they seek protection of law? How will they seek the protection of law? Are the issues which we may have to consider and deal with. Then comes about the child rights. As we spoke, we saw that this started with the sex reassignment surgeries. Then we speak about the child rights, for which the act specifically means to clear this discrimination and protect the child from keeping him in the family. While it does so with very good intentions, it still does not take into consideration that a child may be forced to leave his family home due to the violence, due to the abuse, and may be forced to take shelter in the marginalized community of the transgenders. So here, the child rights are that no child, section 12 specifically mentions that no child shall be separated from parents or immediate family on ground of being a transgender except on an order of a competent court in the interest of such child. So any social norms that or a community saying that since this child is such a child, then it has to be given away to us. So no such force can be there, and a child's right to stay within the family are protected. But it does not again take into account the child's right to safety and a safe environment. Now, Section 2 of the Domestic Violence Act also defines child as normally as any person under 18 years of age. It shall include adopted step or foster child. It states that, but again, it does not specifically mention anything about the intersex or otherwise transgender child. Now, when we speak about the residents are residents orders as are given under the Domestic Violence Act are not here. Here, the Transgender Act merely speaks about the uh, right to reside in the family home and right not to be thrown out, not to be dishoused from the family home. These are the only rights which are recognized as far as the transgender law is concerned. But it does not anywhere mention about the shared household. It does not mention anywhere about the domestic relationship. Then, in view of this, what is going to happen is any person who is otherwise emotionally or otherwise dependent and living in the family as a member of the joint family, he shall have no protection because the Transgender Act speaks only about the family. It does not speak about members of the joint family or a domestic relationship or a shared household. So the residents regarding the rights regarding the residents as a Transgender Act has is every transgender person shall have a right to reside in the household where parents or immediate family members reside, a right not to be excluded from such a household or any part thereof, and the right to enjoy and use the facilities of such household in a non-discriminatory manner. Now, if we, as opposed to this, if we see the Domestic Violence Act, it has several residential orders. If the person cannot reside in that house for whatever reason or chooses not to reside in that house, it is possible that the court may direct the head of the family to make an alternative arrangement of residence for under the Domestic Violence Act. This act does not specify so because it does not specify any rights of maintenance. While all the orders of residence, when it comes to the matrimonial law or the Domestic Violence Act, are in the due to the matrimonial relationship or due to the domestic relationship existing between the parties. Then comes the child welfare, which says that where any parent or a member of his immediate family is unable to take care of a transgender, the competent court shall, by order, direct such a person to be placed in a rehabilitation center. Now, here the inability of the family member to take care of the transgender child is concerned, is considered, but it nowhere provides for any other facilities like counseling or the service provider, protection officers, and so on. So here the Transgender Act is lacking in a huge way, and we may have to take care of all these issues under the Domestic Violence Act. If the mother approaches the family court or the court under the Domestic Violence Act or under the other provisions of law. So here, this is in addition to the other laws that we will talk about. Now, here again, under the Transgender Act, there is no mention of any custody orders, visitation, nothing has been mentioned except this. Then the offenses and the penalties. It is very, I don't really know what to say about this, but the offenses that are mentioned on the Transgender Act are really, I mean, the kind of abuse that has been mentioned is again akin to the one under the Domestic Violence Act. It mentions about the physical abuse, economic abuse, sexual abuse, and emotional abuse, but it still does not call it domestic violence. Let us see what are the punishments. Section 18 says, whoever compels or entices a transgender person to indulge in the act of forced or bonded labor other than any compulsory service to the public for the public purposes imposed by the government, that is the offense. That if you compel or entice a transgender person into indulge into an act of forced or bonded labor, anyone who denies a transgender person's right of passage to a public space or obstructs such a person from using or having access to public place, that would be an offense. Anyone who forces or causes a transgender person to leave his household, village, or other place of residence, which is in terms or in other words, ostracization, social ostracization, that would be an offense. And lastly, this is what I was talking about, harms or injures or endangers life, safety, health, or well being, whether mental, physical, sexual, verbal abuse, emotional abuse, and economic abuse will be punishable with an imprisonment which shall not be less than 6 months but which may extend to 2 years. Now, another so here, while all the abuse, the types of abuse have been very clearly stated under this act, it still does not speak about the domestic violence. So is it expected that such abuse is going to occur outside the family, in the realm of society? It is very, when the transgender people's or same-sex people's right to marry, to live in, to stay together starts actually coming in place, the cases which fall under the domestic violence category, where will they go? How will be they treated? Whether the Domestic Violence Act will be amended, it will have to be extended, or how do we go? How do they deal about it? The additional relief under this, which comes under Section 20, it says that all the reliefs which are stated under Transgender Act are in addition to all the other existing laws, which of course means that under the IPC also they can take the recourse or remedy. So here, as we can see, is what is completely absent from the Transgender Act is, and which is available under the Domestic Violence Act, is the domestic relationship, the concept of domestic relationship, concept of shared household, the domestic violence, which is not considered at all, that can be perpetrated in a family situation. There is no provision for any protection orders, though there are injunctions, orders in the nature of injunction when it comes to the residents or otherwise are there. It does not speak about any protection order. It does not speak about any compensatory orders. It does not speak about specific residence orders which are as are shown in the Domestic Violence Act. There is no monetary order for compensation or otherwise. There are no service providers. There are no medical facilities. There is no protection officer. There are no reports to be made. but we are going on opening the doors and channels for having an all inclusive society. How is this going to impact on the domestic violence side? So as we saw, this all this discussion comes under the very broad spectrum of the family law, which ranges from child custody, that is from the birth, the child custody, to the validity of marriages, to the divorces, to the custody orders, maintenance, matrimonial properties, the offences, the divorces, and so on. So if we look at largely, it's the legal fields which we will need to develop to have these various categories to be included in the mainstream would be the marriage and divorce, succession and inheritance, adoption, surrogacy, custody, guardianship, protection from the Domestic Violence Act, protection of from sexual harassment at workplace, the rights of the children, which is again another area that is developing very fast. So considering these issues, I feel that there is a large scope for filling up these lacunas which are lacking in the existing transgender bill or even the other laws which are based completely on the concept of binary gender or sexual ideas, sex ideas. And therefore, when we are talking or opening doors wide open for including such variations into the mainstream, we need to also think about and prepare ourselves when the Supreme Court itself is passing such progressive judgment, giving such laudable directions for us in the direction of the human rights, in a complete protection of the fundamental rights of every citizen of India. Here, such issues we will have to deal with. That will include the issues regarding the infidelity, the adultery issues that we are talking about. So here we will not only talking about the law, but we will be also talking about the jurisprudence, the issues like the legality, morality, the social norms, what is the general good, the larger good. All these things will have to be decided, and the law of interpretations will also have to be brought into play where we talk about the concept of mischief rule of interpretation. The mischief rule of interpretation is where there is a mischief which is already existing, or there is a fault or a lacuna which is already existing in the society or in the realm of laws. And a special law is passed in order to correct that mischief or to correct that fault. So that is when the mischief rule of interpretation is put to use in order to interpret the existing laws. So that is how we may have to work and use the existing legal provisions unless and until there is an amendment which is proposed either in the transgender bill to include all these rights or in the domestic violence and the sexual harassment, wherein again a new question is going to arise for the feminists or and for the legal fraternity as well. What happens to these women centric laws? Or will we be able to categorize all the transgenders and other people into the female category and all rest cisgender heterosexual people into the male category? What are we going to do? What are we going to talk about? So where do we go if the entire women's rights issues gets transformed into the human rights? Then where does the women's special status stand under the Article 15.3, where special laws for them can be made because they are an underprivileged class? So all these issues will need to be studied and sorted, and only huge progressive judgments we will have case laws based on that. Further judgments will be passed, but we may not have a basis of insubstantial law to go ahead and actually grant the relief. That is what we need to sort out. So this may be termed as a conflict of interest in various groups, which needs to be resolved through the judgments, through the case laws, through the beneficial interpretation, by using the mischief rule of interpretation, and of course having the beacon light of the fundamental rights under 14, 15, 21, and so on before us in order to interpret and correct the mistakes. I thank you very much I thank the Adhivakta Parishad Mumbai for giving me this opportunity to share my views and thoughts on this. I also thank all the viewers and listeners who have patiently heard me. If there are any questions, I request you to kindly ask them. However, let me also clarify that since this is a part of the study and since nothing is concrete except the transgender law right now, and what is being studied is the comparative study of various laws. There may not be very concrete answers to every question. We can answer the questions only on the basis of the laws passed so far, or the laws or the case laws which are there. So I request you all, if there are any questions, to go ahead and ask. I think there are no questions coming in. So I once again thank Adhivakta Parishad and I conclude here. Thank you very much.